Hey, spooky, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite albums, and today I'm going to do an album review on the latest clipping record, There Existed an Addiction to Blood. So, Clipping is an experimental hip hop trio consisting of two white guys and one black guy, and they are not Death Grips. They're actually um, William Hudson and Jonathan Snipes for sound production, and David Diggs as the rapper and storyteller. And after they dropped their mixtape Mid City, they dropped their debut album Clipping, or CLPPNG, however you like to call it, but it is one of the most creative rap albums of the decade, in my opinion, with its very crispy, clear, electronic, clickety, clackety, bleep, bloop beats that are very HD. I really love the deadpan, but also the really clean and clear rapping performance from David Diggs, and the storytelling is fantastic off of all their records, and also the flows. Since their music isn't really all that melodic, the flow usually carries the track. There are tracks on the album like Body and Blood and Work and Summertime, literally three of the first core tracks off of their debut album. All of them have amazing beats and amazing flows, even for tracks like Inside Out and Story 2, where this beat is changing its time signature every 8 bars or so. It starts off with 3/4 time signature, then 4/4, then 5/4, then 6/8, 6/4, I don't know, and then 7/8, and then 8/8, and then 9/8, and then 10, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. But yet the song still sounds super smooth, and David Diggs' performance totally nailed it. Like, it sounds like he had been practicing rapping over such a weird time signature for like ever. It's like he's made for this. So yeah, it's needless to say that Clipping, their debut album, is a 9 out of 10, and it's one of the better albums of the decade. And of course, we have the album Splendor and Misery from the year 2016, which is not as, I guess, entertaining musically, but more entertaining in terms of the narrative and the story, because this is a concept album about how a guy is stranded in a slavery spaceship and how he needs to escape. And it's a really interesting concept album, and it's also one of the better albums in 2016. Not only did they make albums, David Diggs are also in movies such as Blind Spotting, and he's also Thomas Jefferson in Hamilton. And the other two guys also made soundtracks for various movies, and it is no surprise that their next album, There Existed an Addiction to Blood, is going to be just as cinematic, if not even more cinematic, than all of their previous albums. Also, I forgot to mention Wriggle EP. Oh my gosh. Tracks like Shooter and Wriggle, the title track of the EP, geez, they're amazing. Wriggle might be my personal favorite Clipping song. If not, then it's Work. But still. This album is hard to digest. If you're a mainstream hip-hop head, you'd probably be disappointed by this album, because this album is not really that catchy, and it doesn't rely on flow as much as any previous Clipping albums. But this album is also even more interesting, because this album, you can call it horrorcore, because this album is supposed to be scary and not, experimental scary, but the classic horror kind of scary. The ghosts, the murderers, the violence, and it's very scary film, horror film inspired. A lot of the production in this album really reminds me of some classic soundtracks from some classic horror films. Anyway, of course, it's a clipping project, so we have an intro track where it's basically Daveed Diggs just rapping super speed over a pretty drumless, drony instrumental. And what is special about this intro track is that Daveed Diggs' entire verse is high pass. Is in high pass? Or is it low pass? No, low pass is muffled. High pass is like through a phone. So it's in high pass. And it's a pretty good intro. Daveed Diggs can rap really fast, and I honestly think he can beat Eminem. I know, bold claim, I know, but come on. We have the track Nothing Is Safe, and it does sound very John Carpenter horror film soundtrack inspired, with its singular piano notes and its really tense dramatic synths throughout the whole track. This track is about nothing is safe. It's about being in a safe house thinking you're safe, but it's actually under siege. And it's actually really intense towards the end, with the really hard-hitting trap beat and the very loud, drony, panoramic synths and Daveed Diggs' really urgent rapping. It just creates such an amazing tension, yet it's still accessible and kinda catchy. We have the next track, He Dead, featuring Ed Balloon, and it is not a very hard-hitting rap song, but rather it has an unnerving and atmospheric tone to it, with its metallic clangs and its creepy sounds just sort of buried underneath the production. The chorus by Ed Balloon is fantastic. It adds so much personality onto the track, and this track is about police brutality, which is a topic that I think should be pretty well discussed in the world right now, especially in where I'm at right now, that is Hong Kong. But not to get political here, let's get back to the music. The track is creepy, it's sparse, and I just love the performance from Ed Balloon. So is Daveed Diggs. Can you feel it everywhere? Oh, he did. Yeah, it's awesome. And afterwards we have Haunting, an interlude, where it is this vintage audio tape recording of a woman talking about how she is haunted by Satan himself. Pretty unnerving, pretty spooky, I must say. And we have the next track, La Mala Ordina, featuring El Camino and Benny the Butcher. And this track has this really fat, dense, buzzing, warped, distorted synth that is really thick, and I love it. Kind of reminds me of Malibu Ken, another experimental hip-hop project earlier this year. And this track also has some dusty lo-fi drums that I really like as well. Towards the end, we get this really harsh wall of noise that just sounds super crispy clear, yet so dusty and sort of just blurped up. It sounds fantastic. Kind of reminds me of Prurient, the drone artist. The next track is Club Down, with its massive drony industrial hits. Again, I love the flows and the lyrics by Daveed Diggs. The storytelling is quality. It's about gang violence on this track. And yeah, I love the rhyming scheme of the track as well, even though musically it isn't as entertaining or as compelling as other tracks on the album. I still think it's kind of decent. We also have another interlude, Prophecy, where it's this rainy, crackly, grainy, static wall of noise, almost like a mix, a fusion between found sound and just drone music, and it's very noisy. We have the track Run For Your Life, also one of the highlights on the album. This song is essentially about trying to run away from a person who wants to murder you, and the production of the track is fantastic. The beats, they are basically found sounds, but edited and distorted and mixed in a way it becomes this really smooth beat. There's even this speed when the instrumental swells and it's a car driving by, but it's used as a swell, as a build to climax or a build to the hook, and it's friggin' brilliant. And of course, David Diggs gives an impressive flow, and LeChat, the person who's featured in this track, is incredibly impressive because he plays a murderer and he plays it so well. I really like his grimy flows and his twangs as well. We also have the track The Show, which has these very glitchy, distorted beats as well as hand claps. For the most part of the track, musically, it's not all that satisfying. It's kind of sparse. I kind of wish that there's more melody, but at the second half of the track, there's this jittery keyboard um, instrumental that's very faint, and it's it kind of reminds me of Nine Inch Nails, like some of the production by Trent Reznor for some reason, and it actually sounds pretty amazing. And this song is also about how torturous murderer cuts off body parts. It's very graphic, very gruesome, but with the beats and David Diggs' performance here, it just becomes a really awesome, graphic, horrorcore experimental hip hop track. We have another interlude called Possession, where we hear an audio clip of, I think, another horror movie about being possessed. It's a bit campy, a little corny, a little cheesy, but it still fits the overall theme and the tone of the album, and the overall style of the album isn't this, ethereal experimental horror theme, but rather classic horror, the horror that you really know and love. We have the track All in Your Head, which is compositionally a very interesting track. We have David Diggs sort of giving a very sleepy and dead inside performance, while the feature gives this really urgent, sort of anxiety inducing rant, which is then layered by some thumping beats, some metallic pangs, and some synth noise, which are all put together really well. At the second half of the track, we suddenly get this really chilling, sad chord as we get this really beautiful vocal passage with some overblown instrumentals, and it's like this beam of light in the middle of a sea of thick, milky, cloudy darkness, and I just really love it. We also have the track Blood of the Fang, which is probably the catchiest track, nothing is safe is catchy, but so is this track. The beat on this track is incredibly hard-hitting. I really love the samples on the track. They are kind of eerie and creepy, and the track gives a lot of context about the album. David Diggs sort of talk about how the current socio-political climate of the world right now is causing people to start desiring violence, start craving violence. And it's just kind of awesome how this track gives context to the whole album, yet it doesn't sound boring at all. We get some dusty chants, and the flow gets more and more manic towards the end of the track. And of course, we have another story track. Story 7 is the title of the track, another part of the story series. And this story is about how a woman becomes a beast, possibly a werewolf, killing men after seducing them. And the beat is very glitchy, very jittery, and very breakneck. It's very unorthodox, but it's also really, really catchy. I just really love the clickety-clackety textures, and the flow is fantastic, especially when David Diggs suddenly, but also at the same time, very smoothly and naturally transition to this hook where he just sings a cappella in a very witty way. It's just very brilliant. And we have the track Attunement. It doesn't sound as distinct as other tracks on the album. It's a pretty, your average clipping track, except, of course, Horrified, with its industrial noise and its this is the penultimate track, and the last track is called Piano Burning. So there are a lot of mentions of burning on this track, which is kind of genius. Yes, I do like the sharp and eerie bleeps and creaks of the beats of the track, and towards the end of the track we get some really spooky and sour, I think, keyboards, possibly guitars, but I'm gonna stick with keyboards. I still wish that this track has a bit of variety. And then we have the last track. At this point in the album, it's 50 minutes long, but after this track, it's 1 hour and 8 minutes long, because the last track, Piano Burning, it's 18 minutes long, and it's literally just a field recording of piano burning. And I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I don't think it's a brilliant track at all, because it's not even a track. Neither is it really music. Sorry if I get a little Shapiro here, but it's basically field recording, not really a song trying to be musical or anything. And I kind of wish it's shorter. I mean, come on, it's 18 minutes long, and because of this track, this album is over an hour long. But still, it doesn't sound bad. I love the sounds of the flames. But yeah, overall, I still think this is one of the more creative, brilliant, and well-written hip-hop albums of the year so far. Really ingenious use of the spooky, scary theme. And of course, this album is released before Halloween in order to, get the listeners. So it's really smart marketing strategy right there. And some of the beats here, they are amazingly produced. David Diggs gives amazing flows, and I love the drony atmospheric parts of the album as well. So yeah, my favorite track here is probably Blood of the Fang. If not, then it's Nothing Is Safe. And my least favorite is Attunement. I am giving Clippings, There Existed an Addiction to Blood, an 8 out of 10. So, have you listened to this album from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching. Also, I got this, the last installment. Yes! Yes!